So what if some of humanity's oldest spiritual texts held a secret code for astrophysics? I know, it's a wild idea, but today we're diving into an interpretation that argues exactly that. The claim that ancient Vedic hymns aren't just prayers, but a detailed map of how stars work and how light itself moves through the cosmos. Let's decode it. This right here is the central question for our whole explainer. The interpretation we're looking at suggests that inside these ancient verses, we're talking texts from thousands of years ago. There's a hidden language that describes the actual physics of starlight. It's this amazing, if unusual, bridge between ancient mysticism and modern science. All right, let's jump right into the core idea here. The interpretation we're exploring takes these Vedic hymns, which are called Ruchas, and it doesn't read them as poetry. Instead, it reads them as literal descriptions of energy waves playing out on a cosmic scale. So the big idea is this. When a particle, say a photon of light, is born, it's not created alone. It's immediately joined by specific energy waves. And get this, the argument is that the exact characteristics of those waves are described word for word in the structure of these ancient hymns. Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? Well, let's start with the absolute smallest particle of light we know of, the photon. According to this theory, every single photon that's created in the heart of a star kicks off its journey with two essential companions. And here's the breakdown of those two main Heim waves. The first is tied to Agni, the deity of fire, and this wave is what gives the photon its brightness, its power. The second is linked to Soma, a concept of enrichment, and its job is to let that photon actually interact with stuff. To get absorbed by your eye, for example. So it's pretty simple when you think about it. One makes it shine, the other lets it land. Now, the text really zooms in on one specific word from that first hymn, atadi, which you would normally translate as guest. But, and this is really the key, the interpretation here goes way, way deeper than just a simple visitor stopping by. You see, in this reading, the guest isn't temporary at all. It's completely reframed as this constant, pervasive energy that never leaves the photon's side. It's not a visitor, it's a fundamental piece of the photon's identity, what makes it shine and interact. And this idea of being a constant companion, that applies to both of those first two waves. Okay, so now we're going to scale up. Let's see how this whole concept builds, expanding out from a single tiny photon all the way to the insane furnace at the core of a star, which is where these photons are actually born. To describe nuclear fusion, the text uses this really powerful analogy. It compares it to a yajna, which is an ancient Vedic fire ritual where offerings are made and then transformed. So in this cosmic version, the offerings aren't grain or spices, they're atoms, and the transformation creates just immense amounts of energy and light. But it's not just those first two companion waves. Once a photon is created in that stellar yagna, this interpretation says a whole cascade of other hymn waves join the party. They act like a cosmic support crew, serving as amplifiers and guides to help the photon get through the absolute chaos inside a star. And this really breaks down that whole escape sequence. First, the two companions attach. Then you get these amplifier waves, which have 7 verses that are symbolically tied to 7 life forces, and their job is to make the photon brighter, more distinct. And finally, a last pair of super powerful guide waves gives it that final kick it needs to blast free from the star's gravity and start its long journey through space. I know, this all sounds incredibly complex, right? So what's the engine driving this entire cosmic ritual? Well, the text suggests it's a balance between two fundamental forces, and it borrows these concepts from yogic philosophy, Prana and Apana. This comparison is absolutely crucial to the whole thing. You've got Prana, which is described as the force of attraction, of pulling things together. And then you have Apana, the force of repulsion, of pushing things apart. Now for nuclear fusion, that cosmic yajna, to even happen, it can't be a fair fight. The attractive force of Prana has to completely, overwhelmingly dominate the repulsive force of Apana. And this quote from the text really nails it. If Apana, that pushing away force, were stronger, or even just equal, atoms would never get close enough to combine. The star's fire would never ignite. It's as simple as that. It's the total dominance of Prana that lets the whole show begin. All right, you're going to want to stick around for this, because now we're getting to the most radical, most speculative part of this entire interpretation. It's an idea that goes right up against a fundamental concept of modern astrophysics. So, we're all taught that stars are kind of like giant burning fuel tanks, right? They're born with a set amount of fuel, they burn through it for billions of years, and when the tank is empty, they die. But what if that's not the whole story? This text suggests another possibility might be worth investigating. And here is the most fascinating claim. It hypothesizes that stars might not be closed systems at all. The author suggests that some rays from the star act like cosmic fishing lines. They travel way out into space, gather up new matter, protons and that soma substance, and then actively bring it all back to the star to refuel it. In this model, a star only dies when its ability to go out and get more fuel just stops working. Now, what's really important is how the author presents this idea. They are super clear this is not a statement of fact. They frame it as a question, as an area for investigation, basically a new avenue of research that's inspired by this very different way of looking at these ancient texts. So, at the end of the day, what we've been exploring here is a fascinating thought experiment. It's not really a competing scientific theory. It's more about showing how an ancient philosophical framework can be used as a totally different kind of lens to ask some profound and, yeah, pretty radical questions about our universe. And that really leaves us with this final thought to chew on. You know, whether you see this interpretation as physics, philosophy, or just beautiful poetry, it shows that looking at these ancient texts through a modern lens can sometimes reveal the most unexpected connections. And if nothing else, it pushes us to question what we think we know for sure.